but
Oh, it is recording. Okay, yikes.
well, I think we got.
Good afternoon, brothers. We'll just wait just a minute or two for some other folks to trickle in.
It's 3:50.
All right, I think we can get things going. Good afternoon, everyone, again. If you are in the St. Louis hotel lobby, I'm sorry to break it to you, this academy is virtual this year. So wherever you're calling in from, glad to have you with us. It's nice to see some familiar faces, or at least profile pictures. I see Ben Penn, Justin Whitaker, Ruben Sandlin, and a bunch of you there. So Bobby Adams, I'm glad to have everyone here. And welcome to our 2021 Fiji Academy Purple Legionnaire Orientation Training. Moving on, Ralph, I'll let you go ahead first. Introduce yourself.
My name's Ralph Dewey. I've been a section chief for the last 7 years. I've also served as a graduate, as pledge educator to 2 colonies, a trustee president, and also I was a Purple Legionnaire in the late 1980s.
Great, and I'm Vijay Sakara, Connecticut 2012, calling in from sunny Houston, Texas. Started out with the graduate chapter here in Houston, moved on to the BCA with Sam Houston State, and have now been serving as a section chief for Southeast Texas for 2.5 years now, something like that. So Ralph and I both serve on the section chief executive committee together. So moving on, Ralph, I'll let you go ahead and take this slide here.
Okay. The role of the Purple Legionnaire works out to being in 4 different areas: tailor to adapt to the chapter, empower, guide to the chapter, advise, provide tools for the chapter, and mentor, care for the chapter. And we're going to go into more depth with this. And if you notice, it does work out to be team.
That was unintentional, but I'm glad that worked out, Ralph. Yeah, so we'll split this training into 2 parts. You know, the role of the Purple Legionnaire, kind of what you do and serve as a figurehead, and also the day-to-day responsibilities. Ralph, if you want to go ahead with this one as well.
Okay, tailor, adapt to membership changes. We are constantly, I would say, in a state of flux. We're constantly changing. As it was, if you were on the diversity meeting just now, our membership is changing, and hopefully will change for the better as we progress. So, our members are not the same as they were 20 years ago. And from that, we also have to recognize culture changes, prepare for the unexpected, and also understand your own needs for your chapter.
Right. So, I mean, to Ralph's point, regardless of when you graduated, The chapter isn't what it was then, what it is now. And especially for you Purple Legionnaires who may be overseeing a chapter that wasn't your own. For example, me being from Connecticut and I worked on the BCA with Sam Houston State, things are different in the South, I found out. Being able to adapt to different chapters and to Ralph's point about the culture changes, hazing, alcohol abuse, sexual abuse, and diversity, these are all talking points now more than ever. And being able to tailor your advising skills to that will be really important. And to that last bullet point, I also want to bring up about, understanding your own needs is something that we don't always discuss as graduate volunteers and as advisors. And to that point, you all have careers, you all have families, you all have your own ambitions. If things change in your personal life, whether you can't make it to a meeting every week, it needs to be every other week, or whatever it could be, have that conversation with your chapter. And have that conversation with your other graduate volunteers too, the BCA, the House Corporation, your section chief. If you need help, be sure to reach out to us. Moving on to Empower. One thing you'll notice, if you haven't already, whether it was in your undergraduate days or now, is that these chapters are built and organized to be self-sufficient. Make sure that you are not overbearing on these chapters, on these brothers, and recognize that we're there more for when they need our help and when they need us to advise them. And to that point, align headquarter goals and the university fraternity and sorority life goals with those chapter goals. And don't simply push the chapter toward a high GPA or a specific pledge class size simply because headquarters is requiring it. Try to frame the goals to what the chapter wants. It's not always necessarily you need to make a 3.2 because headquarters wants a 3.2. It's more than that. It's because higher grades will lead to a higher standing on campus, which is ultimately what these brothers want. A stronger pledge class yields to stronger events, stronger leadership, stronger partnerships with sororities or other social groups on campus. And to that point, don't forget that the undergraduates are ultimately the decision maker. This is their chapter, and while headquarters and the other advisors, we set boundaries on whether it's academics, ritual, and the like, they can still build their own healthy, positive personality on their own that may be different from other chapters on campus, as well as other Phi Gam chapters across Fiji land. And lastly, build self-confidence. These men are young. These men may be in leadership positions for their first time. Really empower them and give them the opportunity to take on these leadership roles and make these decisions for themselves.
Under advising, it's advised don't interfere. Allow the chapter to make their own decisions and object only when necessary in a situation where it goes against policy, state or federal laws, going against something with mental, physical, financial help, or hazing. As long as they're within guidelines of that, it's up to them to how they want to run their chapter and for you to advise them how to make it there. Tools to succeed, show them where they can attain all the resources available to them. And those resources aren't just the university or IHQ, it's people. We don't probably take enough advantage of our graduate brothers interacting with our undergraduates. And it's a good resource for our brothers. But one of the drawbacks there sometimes is making sure that they give the right message. College is a lot different from the 1980s, 1990s, and also the 1960s. I've had some brothers who start telling stories back then, and it can be a little awkward at that point. But they're there but they also do exemplify that Phi Gamma Delta is not for college days alone. Also provide perspective. Ask the chapter how they want to, how their chapters and actions affect others. and that they can look at the outside world, share your own experiences. One of the good things that you will be, depending on how long you are Purple Legionnaire, is the consistency of the chapter. Um, you'll be looked on as a great resource for the chapter and also for the graduates to understand that you're there taking care of the chapter, helping it. It leads to good continuity. Um, then chapter exercises executes tasks. The brotherhood is responsible for the day-to-day operations, submitting reports, planning events, not you. Um, with that, though, one thing that you can help extremely is making sure they evaluate what they've done, because sometimes they could find out that they could do it better if they document some things and evaluate what they did to make sure it's easier the next time they go about doing a project, social service project, anything. But it's their responsibility to do the work, not yours.
Moving on to mentor. At the end of the day, these chapters, we focus on grades, we focus on service, we focus on, having good socials and events, but ultimately we are trying to help bring these men from when they're kids, when they join college at 17, 18 years old through maturity. I remember what I was like when I was 17 and joined my freshman year of college at UConn, and I was a different person 4 years later. At the end of the day, the Purple Legionnaire is such a crucial role because you are a mentor for all these brothers. And in that position, they'll look to you to build personal and career skills. I didn't learn in high school how to balance a budget, and I didn't in any of my chemical engineering classes either in school. I learned how to do that in my chapter, in my fraternity. Managing peers, planning events, and sometimes resolving conflicts. These are a lot of things that students and kids these days just don't learn. And the day after they graduate college, they're expected to find a job and have all these skills in the real world. And on that line, from these experiences, we can help teach life lessons to these brothers. And they're not always relevant to chapter operations. Sometimes they're more personal, whether there are disputes with a friend or a significant other, problems at home, a loved one passing away, moving away, or, I know folks who are in their junior or senior year and are unsure of a career path or even a major. And to that point, you all have your own big and little brothers during your time as undergraduates and now, but consider yourself a big brother to the entire chapter.
I'd like to add to that. One thing we didn't state, thank you for what you're doing. Because as Bill Martin has said, this is the most important position within Phi Gamma Delta. And you do give an incredible service. And especially those who may be brand new at doing this, you'll find the reward of doing it. And with all these items that we went through, one of the things that's important is that you're enthusiastic about it. Your enthusiasm will rub off on them. I'd like to relay a little situation where I was talking when I started helping with William and Mary when they just became a chapter after we chartered them. The historian told me later he wanted to do such a good job with ritual because he heard me talking about it. He saw my enthusiasm with it. So how you approach them, your enthusiasm will rub off, and you may reach brothers without realizing it. So with that also, you do have to guard your actions and your words so they get the right message. Responsibilities of the Purple Legionnaire. And we broke these down into 4 areas. One is the chapter, and that's to serve as the chief chapter advisor. Headquarters, ensure adherence to IHQ rules, also reports. University, maintain a relationship with the FLS office. And then graduates, keep graduates engaged, educated, and recruiting them. At some point, you may not want to be a Purple Legionnaire at any point. And it's also very important that we know, you can find your replacement. Back in the 80s, IHQ loved to put out a lot of signs. And one of the signs that I had as a undergraduate was for recruitment was replace yourself. So that's something that unfortunately you have to keep in back of your mind at some point, is that you will have to replace yourself. But hopefully you do it, you serve a good long time.
And Ralph, and to our attendees as well, while the previous slide unintentionally spelled out the word team, I swear this was unintentional that these four spell out chug. So I will ask our Purple Legionnaires not to advise our undergraduates in that activity. Moving on to advising the chapter, being the Purple Legionnaire, and what your role is specifically with the chapter. And first and foremost, you are the advisor for the Brotherhood. And with that, we ask that you guide them towards smart, efficient, safe, and honestly fun decisions. Help them identify weak areas and areas they can excel. Support them during difficult times, whether there's an incident on campus, problems with chapter morale, or conflict within the Brotherhood. And even right now during the pandemic, ask the brothers after your meetings, your Zoom calls, how are they doing? What is chapter morale like? And it can really go a long way, and it'll help you identify problems before they happen. Of course, attend chapter meetings and events. Ralph, I'm not exactly sure if we have an exact rule, if it's every other meeting or every meeting, but I think we ask of our Purple Legionnaires, attend as many things as you can. Ritual and non-ritual meetings, cabinet meetings. I know those are perhaps easier now that we're doing things virtually, but once we get out of this pandemic, service events, Greek functions, campus-wide functions, the more you can be there for your undergraduate brothers, the more they'll notice, and the more you'll be able to not only recognize potential issues, but highlight successes of theirs as well.
I would caution you, if you're a Purple Legionnaire and you're recently out of college, do not go to a party. You do not need that type of liability against you in the event something would happen.
Along with those, officer elections and transitions. Help the brothers set up a meeting between the outgoing and incoming cabinets. Remind them to send in the names of the new brothers to headquarters. Discuss what the responsibilities of the roles are. Ensure a smooth transfer of power. Coincidental, we're discussing that now after Wednesday. The handoff of bylaws, contracts, documents, and make sure that when you do transition between cabinets, there's a continuation of the chapter goals and their pursuits. Along those lines, chapter retreats. I think it's great if when we have our chapters have an annual Brotherhood retreat. Ask the brothers to come prepared with goals, ready to learn, to cooperate with their fellow brothers, and of course, have fun. These Brotherhood retreats should be something enjoyable, along with the discussing of goals and setting them for the next annual year. With respect to incoming members, the new pledge class, I think one of the most important things and one of the greatest things a Purple Legionnaire can do is sit down with them, just you and the pledge class, share your contact information, and foster an open line of communication with these pledges. Make sure that they know what their member Bill of Rights are. That's on the fraternity website if you need to familiarize yourself with that. And assure them that regardless of what they've seen in the movies or what they may have heard in the past or rumors, Phi Gamma Delta does not tolerate hazing. Your chapter does not tolerate hazing. And make sure that those pledges, even though they may not be brothers just yet, you are there for them just as much as you are for the initiated chapter brothers. Also, the administrative things, be sure to be familiar with the fraternity policies, our risk management on alcohol use, on socials, our stance against hazing again. Review the budget every year or every semester, depending on the chapter, whether it's, taking a look at past expenses, what the budget's going to look like for the upcoming semester, inquire about questionable expenditures, monitor their accounts payable, such as dues, as well as receivable and bills, and that the chapter, of course, does not have any outstanding expenses owed to headquarters. Review the bylaws and the house rules. Now, this is something that you don't have to necessarily do every meeting, but perhaps once a year, and especially with each incoming pledge class. Ritual and governing documents, know the ritual as much as you can. The brothers, whether it's the historian or the chapter itself, have any questions, they will look to the Purple Legionnaire in a ritual meeting. Appreciate the ritual, and the brothers around you will appreciate the ritual as well. Have the undergraduates, show respect for the ritual, care for the ritual dress, salutes, paraphernalia, and make sure that the cabinet is safeguarding these esoteric materials.
I would add that with the ritual, that if you give a strong foundation of using the ritual, that will rub off on the undergraduates. Again, this is advising, but it's one of those things where you want to build that influence of leadership. Now, the next slide is on your relationship with international headquarters and BCA. Get to know the graduates who are serving on your BCA, your house corporation. Get to know your section chief and your field secretary. Hopefully, you have time to spend when your field secretary comes to visit. Please make sure you do have that time to set aside and visit. Obviously, that's a little bit different right now with COVID, but it's one of those things where you do want to make sure you're working with your field secretary. When there is a opportunity for in-person at an ecclesia or an academy, make the time to get to know other graduates. Other graduates are a great resource for for help, and also for you to give them help. You'll find out that, again, we say Phi Gamma Delta is not for college stays alone. And it also works out that we're just not restricted to our own chapters. You'll develop great relationships with other brothers at these events. So I would really encourage you, when you can make it, go to Academy and Ecclesia. Registration, make sure that your members are going to Ecclesia and Academy. Usually it's a minimum of 3 members. So make sure that's happening. Chapter awards applications, try to encourage that, especially if your chapter has not been applying to it. I've understood that the committees take that into consideration if you've never applied before. Good news submissions, make sure that that the fraternity chapter graduate brothers, they have the magazine submissions. That's one of the first things that all graduates go to in that magazine, is usually to see what their chapter is doing. And it's very disheartening when you go to that magazine and you cannot find your chapter. So, that's one of the things that you want to make sure that's in there. Make sure that they are getting a newsletter out or something to give updates on all the chapters doing. Because at some point you may ask your graduates, the BCA House Corporation may ask graduates for money. And if they're not doing that little bit of getting communication out to them, they're less willing to donate.
And to a couple of Ralph's points, the chapter awards, I think headquarters had said something like maybe a quarter or a third of our chapters submit awards annually. So out of the 150, 160 chapters that we have right now in the US and Canada, there's still such a few amount that apply. And to his point, if you're a first-time applicant to these awards, the committee takes it into consideration. Go for it. You never know what's going to happen. Some of my schools in my own section had, whether they're relatively recently chartered or they just haven't in a while, they've submitted for some awards and they've won them. And with respect to the good news, the Friday letter, the Phi Gamma Delta magazine, I personally get a lot of my updates from the fraternity, from social media, but when that magazine comes in, I open it up and I read it. And I love to see my section represented. I'd love to see my alma mater represented. So it feels great as a graduate to see a school that you are affiliated with in that magazine. It's great to see that there was a service event held or money raised for a good cause. So be sure to really hit that hard with your undergraduate chapters. Moving on to your relationship with the university, I went ahead and put the Wilbur Cross building at my own alma mater there on this screen. It's really important to have a strong relationship with the fraternity and sorority life office. When things go south, sometimes with these chapters, which I hope will not happen to any of yours, having a strong relationship with the fraternity and sorority life office can really make or break the situation on campus. Be sure to request information on what the university needs from each chapter and try to visit once a semester or once a year with the office when you can. Sometimes your chapter may not tell you the whole truth with certain happenings going on campus, and you can get a different perspective and a different viewpoint from these administrators. To that point, you're going to want to, of course, make sure that the chapter is not only in good standing with Phi Gamma Delta headquarters, but with the university as well. Whether it's academics, service hours, attending required campus events, ensure the chapter is adhering to what the university requires, Greek life organizations, and specifically the chapter that you oversee. And lastly, and I think this is something that all of our chapters and all of our advisors need to work on a bit more, is try to speak to these administrators, the FSL office, and ask what Phi Gamma Delta can do to be a better partner on campus. If there's a particular initiative that the university is pushing, or if there's something they would like to see from its students, get to the front of that. Being a better partner now will definitely help your undergraduates and the chapter, when what hits the fan.
You're asked to go to, visit at least once a year, twice a year. I would try to recommend that maybe you go in the beginning of the school year, meet at least halfway during, at the end of the first semester,
Mhm.
and then have a wrap up with the university towards the end of the spring semester. If your school is very involved during the summer, may not be a bad idea during the summer, but I would try for 3 visits, just so you're in touch with things. Okay. Graduates. Again, we're going to hit on the chapter newsletter. Introduce some ideas with the chapter newsletter, introduce the new pledge class, share last semester's grades, most recent service events, information on graduate events. Also with that, announce that if graduates are getting married, having children, profile of the undergraduate chapter brothers and some on the graduate brothers. Make sure your chapter is holding the annual pig dinner, and make sure that there are certain things that are being done during the pig dinner. The exiles toast, the actual having a pig there, whether it's a real live dead pig or something else. And make it a fun event. And make sure the undergraduates are, also contacting graduates months ahead of time. Also, make sure that the date is set well, at minimum 6 months, because we as graduates, our schedules get busy right away. You can, sometimes you have things that are coming up a year ahead of time. Knowing that date can help with planning. And also, from your standpoint as a graduate brother, you're the one that maybe some of the recent undergraduates will want to also see. You're a great liaison between, undergraduates and the graduates. Uh, again, you have a very important position in our fraternity. If there's a local graduate chapter, please be involved with them, keep them informed. Also, recruit them to pig dinners. Um, it's also a source of advisors and for donors. I do want to respond back to Brother Phil. I hope I don't mispronounce your name too badly. Prybill. Uh, you made a statement that I thought section chiefs were responsible for graduate recruitment. Section chiefs are responsible for graduate recruitment, but it's one of those things where if you're in the front lines, you may have more contact with graduates. It's actually, I would say, it's really a responsibility of everybody to recruit graduates to give back and to serve with the fraternity. And
Yeah, Ralph, to your point, and to Phil's point as well. First off, with the pig dinner, when I was an undergraduate, I didn't really keep much of a calendar other than, what classes I had to go through Monday through Friday. I didn't know what I was doing the next day. But it may be difficult for some of the undergraduates to understand that, as graduates, as we, work on our families, work on our careers, our calendar fills up. And two things that I think is really important that I would ask all of the Purple Legionnaires to convey to their chapters is that having that date 6 months in advance really helps graduates plan around it, because we want to be at those pig dinners, we want to support, but we can only do so if we know ahead of time. And also, to Ralph's point, make it fun. Sometimes undergraduates may plan a pig dinner that is perfect in their mind, and they think it's going to be great for the undergraduate chapter brothers. But you as a Purple Legionnaire can provide some more perspective on whether it's the venue or whether it's the program that some of the graduates like to see as well. And Phil, to your point as well, yes, the section chiefs do recruit graduate advisors, for the BCA, the House Corporation, Purple Legionnaires. But yeah, nowadays, just like in undergraduate years, recruiting is on everyone. So if you guys as Purple Legionnaires see someone that you think may be great for an advisory role, let your section chief know, and we'd be happy to step in and reach out to them. Moving on to everyone's favorite topic, risk management, how to mitigate risk. And Ralph and I wanted to focus on 3 specific topics here: hazing, alcohol, and sexual assaults. And some things we want to highlight that we think can help with these is make sure, with respect to hazing, that your chapter is following a written pledge education program, that it takes in consideration IHQ policies, uses the Purple Pilgrim, and sometimes has specific advisor input that may tailor it specifically to the personality of your chapter and the requirements of your campus. You're going to want to integrate new members within chapter operations. And I know not all of our chapters in Fiji land do this right now, but unless it's ritual or unless it has to do with voting, these pledges are welcome to serve on committees. These pledges are able to help out with programs, and you're turning these pledges into brothers and introducing them into the brotherhood before they're actually initiated. And it helps bridge that divide between us and them, between brother and pledge, which is, when those walls are built up, is a red flag of when we see hazing happening. For you specifically, be sure to build an open line of communication between the new members, obviously as well with the cabinet and the advisors. Like I mentioned before, give them your phone number, your email address, make sure that there's a level of trust between you and the pledges. And for the point of introducing the new members into committees and whatnot, make sure that your chapter is treating these pledges, these new members, as equals, as brothers to be almost. Obviously, you want to stay away from things like chores and physical activities, mental strain, alcohol abuse. At the end of these days, these pledges are going to be our brothers, and they're going to be our brothers for life. And you want your undergraduate chapter brothers to to understand that and recognize that there's no need for hazing. There's no need for the calisthenics or, whatever was done in the movies. These are going to be our brothers. And of course, more of the administrative stuff, but just as important, inform the new members of fraternity, university, state, federal laws surrounding hazing. I know different states have different laws surrounding it. Be sure that not only the pledges know, but the chapter as a whole knows as well. And that new member Bill of Rights is available on the fraternity website too. Moving on to alcohol, again, be aware of the laws and the policies that the university has, that IHQ has, and make sure that the chapter is aware of them as well. We have policies on the possession, sale, use, consumption, and purchase of alcohol, as well as event co-sponsorships. Be familiar with that risk management policy and have a good line of communication with your cabinet and your risk manager on that as well. And honestly, guide the chapter toward events and socials that don't necessarily just focus on alcohol. You don't want open parties. You don't want your chapter to be having events where, the point is to get drunk and get drunk quick. And I know so many of our chapters have excellent events on and off campus, whether it's service events, whether it's partnering with other groups at their school. Push your chapter toward that. And moving on to sexual assault, a great thing that I see my chapter used to do, and I've seen a lot of chapters do in my section, is having the chapter brothers either attend a seminar or plan one themselves that educate, sometimes just the chapter, but sometimes other people on campus, educating these folks on sexual assault prevention. It's something that I would love to see more of our chapters and colonies do. And as a Purple Legionnaire, it would be great to see our advisors push that for each one of our individual chapters. And, if they haven't already, consider contacting a student group on campus that can provide the brotherhood with resources. Headquarters has our own, but of course, there may be a group on campus whose focus is sexual assault awareness and prevention. And to partner with a group like that, I think would be very great for all of our undergraduate chapters.
Okay, on resources that are available to you for graduate brothers, your board of chapter advisors, house corporation, section chief, graduate chapter, and international headquarters. These are all resources available to you. And probably one other thing would be the university itself as a resource. It's online content available through headquarters, the Purple Legionnaire Manual, the officer and chapter retreat facilitator guides. That's a very important thing to go through to get your chapter set up correctly on how they want to handle things in the upcoming year. And also make sure that you do a follow-up on that at during that year on what they set up as goals. Other online content is Advising from Afar, Holmes Murphy resources, and the LMS courses. And of course, probably the best thing is when you attend Academy and also Ecclesia for networking. Those are great opportunities to be able to talk to other brothers to see how they're experiencing things and how they're handling stuff. Again, you will create good friendships with other brothers and as a resource to help each other. You have anything to add, VJ, to that?
No, I'm good. Thank you. Ralph, and to our attendees, I'll just go through these last 3 slides and we can open up for questions. So and I believe we can make these presentations available to all of our attendees later. These are your contacts at international headquarters. Aside from your BCA, your house corporation, and your section chief, you have Dio as our director of graduate involvement, Brian and Joe as our directors of chapter services West and East respectively, Todd, our assistant executive director, and of course, Rob, who you've seen speak a few times during this academy. Moving on to our field secretaries, Eli takes care of our chapters and colonies in the West, Robbie in the Northeast, Logan in the Southwest, Tyler in the Great Plains, and Jarrett in the Midwest. And for those of you asking, I had to ask as well, with respect to the Southeast region, each one of our field secretaries handle a few chapters in the Southeast. Again, we can move on to questions and comments, Ralph, if we have any waiting for us. But one more thing I do want to tell all of our Purple Legionnaires is, again, thank you for volunteering. Thank you for your past and continued service. And I do ask, with all these things that Ralph and I have asked of you today, is that you have fun with it. Being an advisor now for undergraduates, for serving as a section chief and previously as a BCA member, has been a really rewarding experience to serve as a mentor for these undergraduates. And not only that, the networking opportunities have been absolutely phenomenal. Meeting many of you at academies, which unfortunately we couldn't do this weekend, but at Ecclesiae as well. I've met some phenomenal brothers from the United States and Canada, and the travel to my chapters, the travel to the rotating Ecclesiae locations in St. Louis, it's been a blast since I've graduated and serving in an advisor role. So I hope that each and every one of you, while you serve our illustrious fraternity, can have a great time while you're doing it too.
We've only had one question so far. Ben, if this is not posted, I believe this will be posted. It'll be available for, I believe, 30 days. If not, please reach out to us and I'll make sure we send it to you. Since we have very few questions and we have a good amount of time left, what I would like to ask, one of the emphasis that Jason brought up in the beginning of the graduate leadership forum was about training. So I'm not sure how many Purple Legionnaires are on this that are relatively new who are experienced. What training do you think that we need to make sure we provide to you? What other training do you think that would be good? And also training that's needed for your chapters. As we're working on this, we want to make sure we're meeting your needs. Okay, suicide training. Are there any PL groups only that we should be members of? I know on Facebook there is a Purple Legionnaires group. So on Facebook, I'm not sure who the admin is for that. But that's something for me to put, I'll say, in a parking lot.
Right. We can also get some mental health awareness training to you as well.
Okay, training on receiving disclosures and first response. I'll make sure I get this. Training on how to support chapters that are 2 to 7 years old. That is good. I, for example, have been a PL at the Camp Colony. We just started transition training for PLs. Okay. What advice would you give to steer away from interaction and to focus more on advisor? Recently elected PL and graduate of Ohio University, started away from involving myself. John, that could be tough. I will, from my own experience, I graduated in 1986 in May, and I was asked to be a Purple Legionnaire that October. So it was a difficult thing. You make sure you do not go to any kind of parties. And it's just a matter of limiting yourself. Hopefully you're not living right there on campus or too close by, but it's, I'm going to say some of it's going to have to be self-discipline, that you don't get that wrapped up in it. Because I also know that the other problem might happen is if you've got to be handling an awkward situation to where they've been your brothers for a very long time as peers, and now you're no longer their peer since you've graduated. I hope that answers it. If not, we can, we'll try to get some other people who have answers on that. Refresher on Robert's Rules of Order. That's a good idea. Mental health awareness. I think we've had a lot of mental health. How to deal with or work with the growing woke atmosphere on campus. Okay. Now these are good, and this is stuff that we will work on to make sure we, as a section chief executive committee, we make sure that us and the staff are working towards it. I'll have to figure out how to get all these down because I'm not able to write this quickly.
Yeah, gentlemen, please feel free to send us direct messages through the platform. We'll be able to compile that and work on these to send these to you. So we do have the list of attendees. We do see what you've written in the messaging, but you're also welcome to reach out to us directly. And of course, if there's any specific questions to your campus, always reach out to your section chief. They're there for you. If you have any questions on, if you don't know who your section chief is, reach out to Ralph and me and we can figure that out for you. But yep.
And thank you, Matthew. I'm sure I can be able to get the chat transcript. And see, yeah, it's kind of hard to get all those screenshots because it constantly is moving. I'd have to wait till it's all over with.
But gentlemen, I think, thank you all for joining us for this training this afternoon. I know it's been a long day and a half for Academy, but we're trying to be as informative and as welcoming as we can. So thank you for joining us today. I think we're going to let you out 15 minutes early or so, and we'll see you in the
at the closing,
the next presentations and the closing, right? So. Like Ralph and I mentioned, please send us any more questions and comments through direct message, and we'll get directly to you as soon as we can. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And we'll be here. I guess we stay on just for a few more minutes. If anybody has more questions, or we'll stay on. I don't see anything. I'm not seeing anything else. Carson, Lance had a good amount of things for us to check into.
Awesome. Carson, we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
There's more stuff coming in. I think we're done, VJ.
Okay, great. Thank you again, gentlemen, and we'll see you at the closing. And thank you so much for your service to our fraternity.
Okay. And again, we'll get back to you on these.
Take care, guys.
Thank you.